To begin building the speaker box, I've got a 1/2 inch thick piece of walnut that I'm cutting to 8 inches in width at the table saw. If you don't have a planer or a thicknesser, you can always get pre-milled lumber at places like Rockler and Woodcraft. I'm swapping out my table saw blade and putting in a 3/4 inch dado stack to cut the groove in the walnut for the inlaid leather. I'm using a sample piece of leather as a reference to set the height of the dado stack. And before I make the actual groove in the walnut piece, I've got a sample board here that I cut to get it just right. With the blade height dialed in, I set the fence to 2 inches to cut one pass, and then I rotate the board and take a second pass, giving me a centered channel on this 8-inch board. And to remove the rest of the waste on this board, I just keep pushing the fence over 3/4 of an inch at a time, take a pass, rotate the board, and then take another pass, and eventually it removes all of the waste in the center of this board. Even though the final size of the top and bottom panel are 13.5, I cut mine oversized to cut the miter, so I cut it at 13 3/4 of an inch. I repositioned the fence on my miter gauge for 6 3/4, and then I cut the 2 side pieces. Before cutting the miters, I have a 1/2 inch dado stack set a 1/2 inch away from the fence, cutting a 1/4 inch groove for the front panel. I make this groove on all 4 pieces. I've got the regular table saw blade back in now, and I got it tilted to 45 degrees, and I cut a miter on one side of each of the pieces. I mark it at 6.5 inches, and I use my combination square to extend that line to make it easier to see, and then I use the table saw blade to take it down to exactly 6.5 inches. Without moving the piece, I move my stop block over and put it in place. That way the next piece that I cut will be the same exact length. This ensures that if the piece is not exactly 6.5 inches, it doesn't matter because the other piece is going to come out to be the same length. And as you can see here, they both line up, so that method is working out pretty good. And I repeat the same exact method on the top and bottom pieces. With the box out of the way, I cut down this big piece of plywood here for the front panel. I'm using a couple of 4-inch speakers, so I'm marking the center point for my hole saw. I didn't have a 4-inch hole saw, so I picked up a relatively cheap set on Amazon, and I'll link to that information in the description below. To prevent blowout on the back side of this, I went down halfway with the hole saw, about 1/4 of an inch, and then I flipped the piece over and removed the remainder of the 4-inch hole. To hide the plywood, I put on a couple of layers of the speaker grill cloth that you see here, and I just sprayed on some Super 77 to hold it on with. And I would highly recommend to not spray this on your workbench. I'm not sure why I did. I guess I was rushing it and it was a sticky mess. I trimmed away the excess just using a box cutter with a brand new blade in it. After applying just one layer of this stuff, I could still see the plywood, so I put a second layer of the speaker grill cloth over the front panel. For this prototype box, I just used a couple of cheap 4-inch Boss car audio speakers, and I mounted them into this panel just using some 1/2 inch brass screws, and it held it pretty well. And now it's time to glue the box up, so I just used some regular wood glue and applied it on the miters. Even though no one's going to be looking at the inside of this box, I still found myself cleaning up the glue squeeze out. With the tape holding everything into place, I put a couple of clamps on here to even it up and get the box back into square. I did have a couple of issues that these clamps were able to fix. Now, miter joints without reinforcements are a pretty weak joint, so to back that up and to make it stronger, I cut some 3/4 by 3/4 inch stock at the table saw and then cut them to 4 inches in length to glue on the inside to reinforce the miters. I wasn't able to get any clamps on the inside of this to hold these into place, so I put some yellow glue on 2 sides, and then I put a few drops of CA glue on 2 sides to act as kind of an instant bond, and I just held it in place with my hands. And using my combination square, I inset each of these 4 pieces back about 3/4 of an inch from the edge. And I held the piece into place for about 15 to 20 seconds to allow the CA glue to set up, and it worked pretty good. And I went back to the 3/4 inch plywood to cut a piece for the back panel. Next up, I drilled a 1-inch hole in the back panel so the power cable would have access to the amplifier. To have quick access to the inside of the box, I didn't screw it into place. I had some 1/4 inch round, 1/8 inch thick magnets that I screwed into each of these posts. I simply held them into place with the same CA glue. And next up, I added the magnets to the back panel. To keep the look consistent, I put some of the speaker grill cloth on the back panel as well. To add a little flair to this, I found this pretty cool metal tag off of Etsy that I put on the back and held it into place just using some brass screws. Alright, now we're moving on to the leather, and what I have is some 3 to 4 ounce cowhide leather here. I square up one side of the leather and then cut it to its final width using a straight edge that's been clamped to my workbench. I'm dyeing the piece a mahogany color using a Fibings alcohol-based dye, and I'm just applying it with a foam brush. After I applied the first coat, I let it dry for about 30 minutes and then applied another full-strength coat of the dye to achieve the color that I liked. Before gluing the leather down, I took this opportunity to go ahead and use my hand plane, or you could use sandpaper, to smooth out the surfaces. One thing I should have done before gluing the box up is to sand the inside of the front frame here where I couldn't reach, and now it's kind of awkward, but I just used 180 grit. I like to pre-finish the leather before gluing it to the box, so I got some carnauba cream that I apply with a cotton rag, wait about 5 minutes, and then I come back with a clean cotton cloth and buff it out. I'm pre-finishing this box before applying the leather using some shellac, and I'm brushing on 2 full-strength coats of the seal coat. After about 24 hours, I come back with some 220 grit sandpaper and sand the surface smooth. On the last 2 coats, I like to run it through a paint straightener to make sure that it's clean, and then I'll thin it 50-50 with denatured alcohol, and then I'll wipe it on with a cotton rag to ensure that I get a nice run-free, streak-free final 2 coats. I started the leather wrapping on the bottom of the box, and I made a mark about halfway in from the side, and to hold the leather down I'm just using some regular yellow wood glue. The key when putting the leather down was to make sure that it was below the edges, and to remove the squeeze out and to make sure there was no bubbles anywhere where I forgot to put pressure. And this is one of the reasons why I pre-finished the leather and the box, because if I got glue on it, it's real easy to wipe up. And I made a caul that's the same width as the open groove, so that way it'll put pressure down on the leather, giving me a good glue joint. After about 30 minutes, I took the caul off and then went ahead and wrapped it around the next side, again using the yellow wood glue. And when you're wrapping it around the corners like this, it's really important to put a lot of pressure and pull on the leather to make sure that it wraps around the corners and doesn't leave any bubbles or any gaps where it meets the corner. If I were to do this again, I would probably pick better quality leather. I noticed on one side of the leather it had wrinkles and scars where the cowl was scarred, but that's just a learning process, and this is a prototype. So I wrapped it around all 3 or 4 sides of it, and again meeting at the bottom right here at the crease where I made the first cut. It worked out pretty well. There's some stuff I learned along the way and I'll be doing different. For instance, I'd make the groove a little bit deeper, and I would use thinner leather. And right here at the seam, I just used pressure with my hands to hold the leather into place for the glue to stick. It didn't take very long for the glue to start to tack up on this leather. I used a piece of scrap leather here underneath the clamp pad to make sure that it didn't mar up the leather on the other side. This is the Bluetooth amplifier that I used for this build. I just wanted to show you what it looked like, and I'm not sure if I can recommend it. After playing with it for probably about 2 hours on my laptop and on my phone connected, there's a lot of feedback when there's no volume or no sound. Even when the volume is real low on the audio, there's still a lot of buzzing and feedback, so I don't think that I would recommend purchasing this. Just shop around for a better unit. With everything hooked up, the back panel's put back into place, the magnets hold just perfect. And this unit is really easy to connect. Your phone or your device will see it, just tap it to connect, and it's really easy.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 85 of Making It. I'm Bob Claggett here with Jimmy DeResta.
Thanks for watching, guys. This is version 1 of a prototype that I'm working on. And there's some stuff that I learned along the way, such as next time I would use thinner leather, make the grooves a little bit deeper, probably use thicker speaker cloth, and find a better Bluetooth amplifier for sure. But this thing packs a lot of sound, and it's really loud. And the walnut and leather combination looks great. So appreciate you watching. Let me know what you think below of the design and what you would do different if you were to build one. And share those with your friends if you think that they would be interested. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next video.